Tech by Tips.
Welcome to another Tech by Tips video. In today's video, we are talking about the Azure repos and actually getting down and dirty and kind of starting to use it and show a little bit how you can actually use this part of the Azure DevOps platform. And as you remember, last time we were here in the Azure repos and we have one branch that is the main branch that we initiated with a README. We haven't touched anything here, so all our code only has a README file as of now. And we said that we can go into the files view here to look at the files and make changes there. We can click down here on the commits section and see everything that has been committed to the repository. We can also go into the push section here and see when things have been pushed to the repository and what has been pushed. And we can see the branches that we have in our code here. We have the option to view tags if there's any tags here applied to the repositories, and we can go into the pull requests here to see any pull requests that are active, completed, etc., that have not been done, and all of that. We have an option here for advanced security, and this basically allows us to do embedded secret scanning, dependency scanning, and code scanning with GitHub Advanced Security for Azure DevOps. So those are options that we have here in the Azure repos. So let's go first and work on the files section in Azure repos. We have actually two ways to work with our repositories. If we have minor simple changes that can be done in a web interface, we can easily do it here. And we also have the option of cloning the repository to our computer and then making the changes locally in our computer and then pushing those changes to the servers in Azure DevOps. So how do we do that? Let's first cover how we can make changes to our code in the web interface. So for example, in this repository, we currently only have a README file. And if I go into the files view, you see it here, only this, and this is what it looks like. That's by default what it has. If I click here, I can see the contents of it, and I can also make changes here directly to the file. We can see the preview of the current contents of those files, the history that describes who has done what to this file. We can compare to previous versions also. And in here, let's say we go into the contents and I want to change this README. I want it to say something else. So it's as easy as going up here, clicking the edit button, and now we're in the edit view where we can actually make changes here to our code. Let's just put something random here. For example, this is an introductory repository. And I'm not going to have anything else, just that. So when we go into the preview, we can see the changes, what the file is going to look like. And in here, when we click on highlight changes, it shows us on the left side the current contents of the file, and then on the right side what it would be like when we make this change. So all the stuff that you see in red means that it's deleted. You'll always also see a minus symbol on the left side that's telling me that all of this is going to be deleted. And then here in green means that it's something new that is being added to the file, and you can see that it has a plus symbol in there too. So that's going to be changed here by removing all that stuff and adding this new thing. So if we go and say commit, then it prompts us to put the information of that change to the code so that we can commit that to the repository. So in here by default it says updated README because that's what I did. But here you would, in the comment areas where you put like the good information describing what you did and how it benefits the project, and also you can make a reference to a ticket that this is related to. So you can say that, and then in here we say that the branch that we're gonna push this to is the main because that's the one we're working with. And then if you want to link this to some sort of work item in the repository, we can do that. For example, if this were actual code that was related to a user story, then I can select that user story here, and then it's going to link that to this commit. In this case, I don't have it. I'm just going to leave it like that. And then when we press commit, as we can see, it says it was committed to the repository. and if we want to see that, we can go back into the history, and now we see that we had the original README file here that was created on February the 23rd, and then the updated README that was updated just now. And if we click here, then we see the view where it shows us what happened and what changes were implemented to that. So as you can see, it brought us down to the commits from the file section when I clicked on the commit message. When we go into the pushes, we'll see also that there was a push just now to the repository where the README file was updated. And in branches, we don't see anything yet because we only have one branch, so that doesn't reflect any change. The tags, we didn't tag anything, and we haven't done any pull requests. So the only things that we can see that were affected was the file section, where the file is different, and the commits and the pushes. And if we go into the history, we see that. Now, let's say that we want to make changes to our code, but we want to do it locally in our machine. For that, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to go into clone, and then here we have several options. We can do a command like git clone and then the URL that we get here to clone if you have git installed. And if you have an IDE, for example, Visual Studio Code, you can click on here where it says clone with Visual Studio Code. In my case, you're going to see that it's going to prompt me to open that URL with Visual Studio Code. So I'm going to say open, and then we have a problem. In this case, I don't have git installed in the machine. So it tells me that in order for me to clone, I need to install git. So we're going to do that. You click on download git, and it's going to take you to the website where you can download the git file, the installer. And then I already downloaded that, so I don't need to do that. So I'm going to go ahead and install it, and then we'll come back. Alright, I have installed Git, so let's go back into the Azure DevOps interface and then click the clone in VS Code. Now it's going to take us to the Visual Studio Code user interface, and in here then we can pick a place that we want to put our code in. So let's use this folder in my desktop, name Azure DevOps Code, select as the repository destination, and now as you can see it's cloning the repository from the Azure DevOps interface, and then it prompts us for our credentials. So I'm going to sign in with my credentials, and then it asks me how do I want to open the clone repository. So I'll say yeah, open it, and now it basically opened the folder here in the left side of Visual Studio Code so that I can see the files. And as you can see, the contents are simple. It has the README file, nothing else. So the thing is, now we have the full repository clone in our computer, and I can make changes here, and I can push those changes also to Azure DevOps. Let's make a change here. So let's say testing changes from my computer, and then we save this, and then we can always use the option here for source control in Visual Studio Code. And as you can see, it has a bubble with a 1 because it's telling you there's something that we made a change here to one of the files that we have not committed. So we have changes currently that are not in the repository. So we can create a message here just like we did in the user interface. So let's say testing push from my computer, and then here we have the option to commit and push, commit and sync, all of that. So let's go and do a commit, and then it says there are no stage changes to commit. Would you like to stage all your changes and commit them indirectly? Why is this saying that? Okay, let's cancel this for a second. And this happens because I am trying to commit something, but I haven't told the application what I want to commit. So if we cancel here, you'll see that there's a plus symbol here on the right side. That's telling me that the changes that I've made to the README file, if I click here, then it's going to put them like in a list of the things that are going to be pushed to the repository. So I have to stage my changes first. So I click on the plus sign here, and now you can see it says stage changes, and I have the changes that I made to my readme file. And then when I click commit now I don't have any problems. It has committed the changes. But now if you see, it says sync changes. Why? Because the commit exists only on my computer. It hasn't been pushed to the Azure DevOps server. So Azure DevOps doesn't know about this change that I have pushed locally. So the changes are saved locally on my computer. So when I click on the sync changes button, you see that it says push one commit to origin main. So that's gonna grab that change that I have locally and send it through the internet to the Azure DevOps server. So when I do that, okay, first let's go into here, into the repository. Let's go into the commits. Let's refresh to make sure that what we have this too, right? So now if I push that, if I go back into the Visual Studio Code and say sync, then it says this actually will pull and push commits from and to the origin master. So that's telling me first it's gonna check, did somebody else push any code changes from the moment that I have to now, right? So if there's something else, it'll pull that first so that I have the latest version of the repository, and then it's gonna push my changes to the repository. So then I can say okay or okay and don't show again. So let's say okay and don't show again. And now as you can see, it's working and synchronizing the changes, and it says, would you like Visual Studio Code to periodically run git fetch? That's if you want it to constantly check if there are any changes. For now, I'm just gonna X out of there. But if you see, it says that it was successful. So if we refresh here, we don't see any bubble here. So everything should be good. So now if I go into the application again and I refresh, we should see a new commit, and that's the commit that I pushed from my computer. So as you can see, it says testing a push from my computer, and it's in the order of first this, second this, and third this. And if I go into the files now, you'll see that in the user interface, we'll see the latest version based on what I pushed from my computer. So it says that's the latest commit, and if we go and look at the file, it has the testing changes from my computer. So it was successful. It pushed those changes to the Azure DevOps platform, and now I can easily see that in the user interface. And if you see here, this graph tells us that so far we have only committed code to the main branch. So you see a straight line with dots for each commit that we have pushed to the repository. But remember, previously in the series we mentioned that whenever we're writing code, it is very likely that we're going to have to do chunks of code that are pretty big, and we're going to have people working on the same code at the same time, and they're going to have different changes. So this graph eventually will look different, because we would have, for best practices, created branches for each feature that we're working on, each story or each bug that we're working on, and then those are going to be split out from the main branch, and they're going to become their own thing. So if we see it here, this is what we have currently, the main branch that has the different commits. But when we're working on features or stories or bugs, each person is going to have to create their own branch. And for example, let's say Jack created a feature 1 branch and John created a feature 2 branch, and they both started from the same point here, which is this commit. But we have to understand that once you start a new branch, whenever Jack pushes this commit, this is going to look very different from main, and it's going to look different from John's push when he works on that. So that's why we use branches, because then we can merge those changes back into the main branch in a coherent way. So we don't go crazy trying to merge all of those things. So that's what the branching and merging strategy is for. Ideally, and usually, companies create a branch per feature or story. Depending on how the company works, it could be a branch that a person creates and lasts for a day, for example, or lasts for a couple of days while they work on that feature or that bug. And then as soon as they're done, they push it back into the main branch, and that branch disappears and just integrates into the main branch, right? But there are other companies that a feature might take months to develop, for example, and then you'll have a separate trunk, another branch that has a lot of commits that then has to be integrated into the main branch. But ideally, you want to do quick branches and merge them as soon as possible. So let's go in here and create branches, right? From this starting point where we are testing a push from the computer. So let's go click here, and then we're going to create a new branch, and let's name this branch branch 1. Oh, I cannot have spaces, so let's put branch 1, and then let's say feature 1, for example. And we're going to base it on the main, and in this case I'm not going to specify a work item, but you can and you should do that. This is just for the sake of the video. So I'm going to create that branch, and now when we go here, we have the main branch and we have the branch 1 feature 1. So let's create another one, a branch 2 feature 2. But we create that based on the main, like we said. So both branches are going to split from the main at the same point. And once I create that, then we'll see that we have 2 branches and we have the main. So now, if we're assuming that one person is working on branch 1, then that's going to look different for a bit until we merge it into the main branch. And the person working on branch number 2, it's going to look different also. Those are going to be local changes that each person is going to have in their own machines while they're working on it. If we go into the commits section, we're not going to see anything yet because the branches have not been worked on and nothing has been pushed. So that's why it looks the same, right? If we go into pushes, nothing has changed here. And if we go into branches, we see the branches, but if we look carefully here where it says behind and ahead, that is in comparison to the branch where we came from. And currently they're not behind and they're not ahead from the main branch. So we can always see that information here. Alright, now that we have created 2 branches, first of all, I did this on purpose. The branch 1 we're going to edit on the web user interface, and the branch 2 we're going to edit directly in our computer, right? So this is easy. We can just change to that branch, and then once we're in the files and we are in branch 1, then we can work and make changes here. So let's go first here and go into the readme file, and then let's do edit, and then here let's gonna put another line that says change from branch 1 feature 1. So there we go, that's the change that is going to be applied from branch 1 feature 1. So we can basically commit that, and then we can say updated from branch 1. And we're going to push that into the branch 1 feature 1, and we're going to commit it. So now, as we can see, it's in the code, it has been committed. If we go into the history, we'll see that for this specific branch, we have an extra commit after what we had from before. This all came from the main branch. So it looks like a straight line for this one, right? But actually, this is, when it comes, if you look at it from the perspective of the main branch, this is not how it looks for the main branch, right? But you see it, it's here, it was committed. We're going to compare, we can see the change here. So that's looking good. We made a change in the user interface to our own branch number 1, feature 1. So now let's do something similar, but let's do that in our Visual Studio Code. So let's go back into Visual Studio Code, and we have a problem here, right? Remember, we're on the main branch, so we need to switch to the second branch. So we can click here on the bottom, and then a pop-up will show up here where you search for things, and then it'll give you a list of all the branches that we currently have. So we can select it directly from here by clicking where it says origin branch 2 feature 2, or you also have the opportunity of coming here into the 3 dots, clicking on views, and then source control repositories, and then you'll see the branch here, and you can change it by clicking here and then there. So however you want, you can do it both ways. Let's go here, select branch 2, And now, as you can see, we have switched to branch 2 feature 2, and we can always click here on refresh to make sure that we have the latest version and nothing is weird. So now we can go into this readme file and make another change, but this change is going to be changed from branch 2 feature 2. We save the changes and then we're able to commit this. So again, from Visual Studio Code, we click the plus symbol to stage the change, and then we can put another message here that says committing code from branch 2 feature 2, and that's a good commit for now. And we're gonna say commit, and now we have one change that we need to synchronize to the Azure DevOps server. But let's first go there into Azure DevOps and see how does that look. So let's go into branch 2, and if we go into the history, we see the latest that we got from the main. There's nothing else. So now let's push that, and when we sync the changes, then it pushes that to Azure DevOps. So now that it's done, we can go back into Azure DevOps, and then when we refresh this, we'll see that there's committing code to from branch 2 on that branch. So look, it's a straight line again. From the point of view of this branch, it's only one thing that was added. If we go back to the, notice there's nothing here from branch 1 feature 1 on branch 2 feature 2. And if we go to the other one, it's the same. You only see branch 1 feature 1, you don't see anything from branch 2 feature 2. So as you can see, they're diverging, they're different. The code that is on each branch is different. So how do we merge this together? How do we grab all those changes that were done by other people and are in other machines to our main branch where we do our CI/CD, where we build our stuff and we deploy it to our infrastructure? So then for that we use pull requests. So now let's cover the push requests. Now you'd be asking me, what's a pull request? Why do I need that? Well, the pull request is very important because whenever you're pushing code to your repository and you're merging all of that to the main branch, best practice is to review the code before you merge it into the main branch, because the person that is working on the code might think everything's fine, but there's actually could be a bug or a problem with it, and they don't see it. So you need a second or a third pair of eyes to look at the code, and then once they check that everything looks correct and everything looks like there's no problems with it, then it can be approved, and then that code can be merged into the main repository, the main branch. So how do we do that in the user interface here? Well, we're in our branch 1 feature 1, and after we have committed the changes that we made here, you'll notice that you updated the branch 4 minutes ago, and then it has a button here that says create a pull request. And remember when we mentioned the branches before? Let's go there real quickly. Now you can see that the branch 1 feature 1 is ahead of master by 1 commit. It's not behind, it's ahead. So it has one extra thing that master doesn't have, main doesn't have. So that's why we have this option to create a pull request. So when we go here and say create a pull request, then it gives us here a form that we have to fill that would be used to track this code change that is going to be merged into the main branch. So normally here you would put details that you would tell someone that is going to review the code. So for example, in here it says committing code from branch 2 feature 2, and then here I would put details, like if there's a bug, here would go the details about what we're fixing, what the bug was and how we fixed it. If it's a new feature, then we can put details about the new feature and what functionality is adding and stuff like that. And then additionally here we have to select a reviewer. In my case, my Azure DevOps platform only has me, so I'm going to pretend that I'm going to be another person reviewing, so I'm going to select myself. But normally in any company, you'll pick somebody else to do the review. And then you can connect it to a work item here, like a story or a bug. In my case, I don't have one for this, so I'm not going to do it, but you should. And then once you do this, then you can also go back into here and see the files that you are requesting that are pulled into the main branch and the changes that are in there. So we can see that that's the file, that's the change, and there's only one commit that is going to be merged. So then when we're good and satisfied with this information, we can click the create button, and that's going to create a pull request. So this request is going to go to the person that we put as a reviewer, and then that person is going to come here and they're going to see this. First of all, we see that there's no conflicts here, and we see the description that we added when we put the pull request, and then we see here who created that pull request. And this overview section is very important because when I go and review the code, if I find that something doesn't look right, me as a reviewer should make a note here, like something doesn't look right in line number 6, for example. And then this comment would get sent to the person that submitted this pull request, and then they can go and check the code, right? If I don't agree with it, if I don't approve it yet, and then they can create another extra commit in there to fix that problem that I might have seen, right? So this is important. The overview and the discussion section for this is crucial. And if everything looks good, then I can just put a comment here that says everything looks good, bug fixed, for example, and then that's going to be my comment. And as the reviewer, I always have the option up here to go into the files and see what this person is saying that they want to merge into the main branch. In here we have one file, and that file only has 2 lines, which is this highlighted in green, and it tells me here that one file was changed. If I go into the updates, it tells me what the changes that have been pushed to this branch are, and I can see the commits in here. So I have all that access to all of that information here. Now, in here, I can also add another reviewer. Like I said, it can be multiple reviewers, so I can add an optional reviewer or a required reviewer. A required reviewer is necessary. You cannot approve it until that person goes through the review. And you can put tags here, and you can link work items if necessary. Now, if I agree with everything looks good to me as the approver, then I can just go here and go into the approve, and there's several options, right? So I can approve with suggestions or approve as it is. I can reject it if I find that there's a problem with it and the person just has to continue working on it until they fix it, or I can wait for the author to do something. So let's say in my case that I'm just going to approve it. So I just click the approve button, and now it says that I approved the pull request. So everything is looking good now. Now that I have approved it, now I can go into the option for complete here, where you can actually like abandon this branch or complete it or mark it as a draft, right? And this would normally be done by the person that placed that request, but it could be done by anybody really that has the right permissions. So in this case, if I do a press a complete button, what it's going to do is, remember we have 3 branches right now. We have the main branch, branch 1, and branch 2. And this is branch 2, feature 2, that when we complete it, this branch should go away, and then we should only have the main branch with already this commits from this branch embedded into the main branch, and then the other branch, which is branch 1, which will still be there because it has not been merged. So let's complete, and then it says how do we want to merge. I'm going to leave it in the default, which is the merge no fast forward, and then we can click here the complete merge. There's several options here. You can research those options to see what you want to use, but the merge no fast forward is fine for now. And then when we complete the merge, then no merge conflicts, merging the pull request, and we'll see that it says committing code, it was completed, and the proposed changes have been merged into main. So now if we go back into the branches, here we go. That's what I wanted to show. We have the main branch, we have the branch 1, and let's look at something here. The branch 1 was ahead of main by 1 commit, but now it's behind main by 2 commits because something happened while we were working on our code. So we can see that clearly in here. And if we go into the main branch, we'll see that we have the change from branch 2 feature 2. So it's already merged into the code. And if we go into the history, look at this graph. This graph has changed, and it has changed because we branched out. So we were in the main branch all the way up to here. Then we created a new branch, so that's why it separates here into its own separate line. We created a commit there, and then what we did was we merged the new branch with the old branch into one. So now we joined everything together back into one branch. But as you can see, this branch is not on the same line as the original main branch because we've already added extra stuff. So that's why it looks like this. And that's why when we go into the branches, we see that now we're also behind on this other branch that we haven't merged. Now, let's say that I still want to merge the changes that I made in the other branch because it's unrelated. It's something else that was worked and everything should be okay to be added, right? So we would go again and create a pull request, but in this case, I'm not going to go into the branches. This time I'm going to go directly into the pull requests section, and then I'm going to say I want to create a new pull request. So I want approval to pull my code that is in branch 1 feature 1 into the main branch. And now again, we would write all the stuff that is necessary, would put the reviewer, would link whatever we need to link, we review the information, everything looks good, and then we create that pull request. But in here we're having a problem. When the person comes here to review, they're gonna see, oh, there's one merge conflict. So we need to address that merge conflict. As the reviewer here, my job is to then let the person know, hey, you have a problem here, solve the problem, and then we can go ahead and merge. So the person would have to put a note like, there is a conflict with the main branch, please fix. Something like that, for example, and put that comment in there. The person that created the pull request will get that message, and then it's up to them to fix that problem. And how would we fix it? Okay, we can go into our Visual Studio Code. Then we can switch to our main branch and make sure that we get this updated. So we see that we still don't see those changes locally because we have not pulled those changes that were made on the user interface. So we would go and refresh, and we'll do a fetch. And then it says, look, there's 2 changes that have been made to the main branch that you don't have. So I'm gonna say, okay, so sync the changes, give them to me, I want to see. And then when I do that sync, as you can see here, now I see that the feature 2 was added from branch 2. And now that we have that in our main locally, then we can switch back into our branch 1 feature 1, and then we can try to solve that problem that we have. So we could do that by clicking here on the 3 dots, and then from here we can go into the branch option, and then we have here an option that says merge. So we can go merge here, and then it asks us select a branch or tag to merge from. So that's going to be the source of the changes that we need to merge to our current branch. So for that, we'll pick the main branch. So we'll grab all the stuff from the main branch and put it into our branch 1 feature 1. So now that we see the changes that are on each branch, we can see that the main has what we got from the branch 2, and locally we have the branch 1 changes, and that's what's causing that conflict. And we can see here that we have some problems here, so we need to address those problems. So we have this button on the bottom right that says resolve in the merge editor, so we can click here, and then it will give us this that tells us, okay, this is what you have on this branch, which is the main, and this is what you have on the feature 1 branch. So now what do you want to do with those changes? And then you can merge them in here. What we see here is that from the main branch we have on the left, from the current we have on the right, and this is going to be the result in the end for that merge. So what I can do here is, let's first merge the branch 1 feature 1 that we have in our branch. So we click in the accept current, and then you see that that's included here in the result. And then we can also add what we currently had in our main branch by clicking accept incoming in the main. And now as we can see, we end up with a readme file that has both the changes that were pushed to the main, which is branch 2 feature 2, and what we had locally, which was branch 1 feature 1. All of them are here. All of it is in the readme file. So now we can say complete the merge, and that'll solve the problem for us. So now it completes the merge. If we go back here, we see that now we have what we had from the main, what we are making here as our change, and now we can create a new commit that fixes the problem for Azure DevOps. So what we're going to do here is we'll put a comment that says merging branch main into branch 1 feature 1, and then we commit that. But we have changes now that we have to synchronize, so we click on the button to synchronize the changes, and when we do that, it pushes all those changes into the Azure DevOps server. So when we go back into Azure DevOps, then surprise, surprise, it automatically said, there were new changes that were pushed into the branch 1, and now we don't have any conflicts. So now we can go ahead and validate by going into the files. Let me just refresh, and there we go. We have the change from branch 1 feature 1, change from branch 2 feature 2 in our readme file, and we can see the updates here that says that there was an extra commit. It was the merge, and we can see the commits here which have all the changes to the code. So now the reviewer can come here and say, okay, everything looks good now, and they can put that comment in there, and then they can actually go ahead and approve that pull request. So now the code can be merged from branch 1 into the main branch, and when we click complete, we should see we're going to use again merge no fast forward. That is going to merge that, and we're going to go back to one branch. That is going to be the main branch with all the changes that we made in all of our different branches. So now it says it was completed and everything is good. So if we go back into the files, we're going to be taken directly to the main branch because there's no other branch. Everything was merged from branch 1 and branch 2. And if we go into the file, we'll see that the README now has both changes that were made in both branches. And now we're back to our working main branch with all the features that we added to our code. So that's how you do branching. That's how you do pull requests. And that's how you merge code and deal with conflicts. So for now, this is going to be it for this section, and the video is already pretty long, so I'm going to end it here. Remember, if you like the content, like, subscribe to the channel, share the videos with people that you think will find it useful, and also remember that I do not monetize this channel. So if you want to support me to continue creating content of quality so that you can learn and develop yourself even more, there's links in the description below where you can do a PayPal donation or a Bitcoin donation if you like, and I'll really appreciate it because that'll allow me to focus on the channel to give you quality content that you will enjoy. So for now, that's it. I'll see you on the next video.